Okay, we're checking. Okay, now we're live. Okay, if everything is going according to plan, I am now live on YouTube and I'm live on Instagram. And as of right now, I wanted to do my first ever hot take. This is a hot take on a story related to the wedding and event industry that's going on right now. There is a wedding venue located in Calgary, British Columbia, Canada, called the Cherry Creek Estate. And I'm learning about this online. I think it's a Calgary newspaper. This is where I'm getting the information from the story. I will put a link in the YouTube section. What do they call that? It down below. There'll be a link below where you can read this story. But in essence, there's a wedding venue called the Cherry Creek Estate in Calgary, British Columbia. Okay, so what's going on right now is they are forcing all, or at least some of their clients who have weddings scheduled in June, July, August, September to maintain those dates. They are requiring couples to maintain those dates. They are not letting couples reschedule those dates, even though the couples are wanting to reschedule for 2021. You keep the money, it's fine. We're just going to reschedule. We'll try to get the thing happening at some other date. This wedding venue, at least for the couples that have been mentioned in this story, are saying, no, we are forcing you to stick to the actual contract as it is for that particular date. However, the venue is requiring everybody that attends to be 6 feet apart. That's right. At a wedding reception and possibly the ceremony, but definitely there's a reception, everybody's got to be 6 feet apart. They're also saying that everybody that's getting food has to eat the food in their own individual room. So there's hotel rooms, or maybe not hotel rooms, but rooms involved with this venue. You got to get your plate and you got to go to your own room to eat it. You cannot eat it with the other people. Also, doesn't matter how many people you had scheduled for the event. It could be 150 people, 200 people. We are limiting you to 45 people. So not only does everybody got to stay 6 feet apart, they're limiting you to 45 people. Okay, so that means with 6 feet apart, you're going to have a reception without any one-on-one dancing. Mother, son, father-daughter dances out of the picture. Okay, probably people wearing masks. So this is a pretty, I would say, bad move by the venue when you have clients that are willing to reschedule, but you're saying no. And not only am I not going to let you reschedule, but I'm forcing you into these changes to the contract so that we can meet whatever guidelines they have to follow for whoever sets the laws for Calgary. I don't know anything about British government or British laws, but I'm assuming it's whatever the CDC equivalent is or whatever the shelter-in-place rules are. They're trying to meet that. So they're saying, okay, you had an event scheduled with us for 200 people. It's going to be 45 people, equal social distancing, whatever. Don't care. This is not a good idea. And the reason why is because typically, and again, I'm not a lawyer in Canada, but if Canadian laws are anything like American laws, you cannot unilaterally change the conditions and the terms of a contract on your own. In this instance, the venue is saying, we're going to go forward with the contract, but guess what? You can't do all these things, but we're going to keep the money. We're going to keep all the money that we were paid with the expectation that you could have 200 guests, that people could dance with each other, that people could eat food outside of their rooms and together. We're going to not worry about that. We're going to change it unilaterally on our own, and you're going to owe us the same amount of money. Typically, parties to a contract cannot do that. So this is not a good idea for that wedding venue to do that. Typically, if you're going to say that something is happening that is preventing us from moving forward with that contract, you can't just change it. You either have a contract or you don't. In this instance, if you're going to say that we have to have all these draconian measures, that we have to abide by all these guidelines that don't let people do what they typically would do at a wedding, then that means that the actual objective of the contract is frustrated, it is rendered impossible, and we need to do something outside of the contract. They can't just unilaterally change it like this. So typically, if you're in the United States, if it's in your contract, you would argue that it's a force majeure event. Or if you don't have a force majeure clause in your contract, you would argue that the terms of the contract have been rendered impossible. Impossible. because we're not talking about a simple like, well, we had 200 people and now the government is saying we can only have 195 people. That's a different story. This now is you're rendering what was originally agreed to something that's completely different. And like I said, generally the venue is either going to be able to say, we are saying you can accept these changes for less money, or we're going to have to say this contract is frustrated or rendered impossible, and we got to go our separate ways, whatever that looks like to them. What they cannot do is unilaterally force people to come to a venue in the middle of a pandemic and abide by rules that they never intended to adhere to from the very beginning. Okay, so that's that. Bad idea. Venue can't unilaterally change the contract. Hey, it's Aaron. What's up? Okay, so what does that mean in terms of force majeure terms and conditions that we haven't already talked about? A couple of things that are coming on my radar at this point now, and maybe it came on other people's radars earlier than this, but we are going to have disagreements just like this one, where you've got one party saying this is a force majeure event, and the other party saying, no, it's cool to have a wedding when people are 6 feet apart and have to wear masks. Okay, so it's important that your force majeure event addresses the concept of phasing. So previously, force majeure events that have pandemics in it might say something along the lines of, if a shelter-in-place rule is in effect, then the force majeure clause is triggered, and that's what yada yada yada. Okay, in this instance, there's potentially no shelter in place. However, there are physical distancing rules in place. So if you don't want a wedding going forward with physical distancing, then that needs to be put into that force majeure event or in the contract in some way where, hey, all bets are off if we can have a gathering of 100 people, but if we can't dance together, then that might as well be the same as a shelter in place. You see what I'm saying? That needs to be addressed. The concept of, at least in the United States, we're doing like a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, where some businesses are open. If you can get it together, there's different rules, this type of thing. That needs to be addressed in the force majeure clause or wherever. It needs to be addressed somewhere in the contract. The next thing is typically the force majeure event is from the eyes of the parties of the contract. It is from the eyes of the parties to the contract. So whether or not the contract is able to go forward from the vendor's perspective or the client's perspective. Now we're dealing with the pandemic where the client might be able to go because they can hop onto a bus or a plane in whatever city or state they're in, but perhaps a majority of the guests cannot do that same thing. So if that's the case where a majority of your guest list for your specific event are coming from all over the place, and you're saying it ain't no party unless Aunt Lola makes it, then you need to put that in the contract somehow where it's not just from the perspective of the client and the vendor. Something along the lines of and as I'm thinking about this, it would be difficult to really put into words. But if a certain percentage of the wedding party or a certain percentage of the wedding guests cannot make it based on their locality and their shelter-in-place rules for whatever place they're at, if that's something that is preventing them from coming, not just the client, but them, then we're going to say that is triggering the force majeure clause of the contract. So phasing and understanding whether or not a force majeure event is triggered from the eyes of the guests themselves, where they're coming from. These are going to be important things to consider moving forward in the era of this damn pandemic. Okay, so again, thank you for watching this Cherry Creek Estate place. It's crazy. I will have a link to the story that I was talking about in the description. That was the word I'm looking for. In the YouTube description, it'll be in there somewhere. I don't know how to do Instagram links. you can only have one link at a time in your bio. That's ridiculous. Like what's the point of that? So I don't know. So if you want to read the story that I'm talking about, go to my YouTube channel and click on the description and the link will be there. Or just Google Calgary Cherry Creek Estate forcing people to get married, whatever. So this has been the first ever wedding industry law hot take. Oh, there's Toronto Wedding G. What's up? Okay, so this is my first ever hot take. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some information from it, and we'll see you next time.